Hey everybody, it's time to figure out how to get your parents' stuff. Maybe not your parents. Today it's about a subclass trying to get stuff from its parents. And that stuff would be methods, fields, and constructors. Now if you check online on Canvas, you're going to find blank notes for this one, so if you want to print them out, you can just fill them in. If you want to take your own, that's fine too. I think I'm going to start with fields today, and we'll see how it goes. All right? So the story about fields is that if they're public, everybody can get at them. If they're private, if they're marked private, nobody has access, even their children, even their subclasses. I mean, think about it, right? If you go into your parents' stuff and your parents are like, hey, this is public, like, hey, I'm part of the public, I can have that, right? And if they write private on a box, do you think they actually want you to open it? No. All right? Now, there's a third option. If you look at the bottom of the notes, the third option is that it's protected. And that means that the subclasses have access to the parent stuff as well. But outside of the inheritance hierarchy, there's no access, right? So superclasses and their subclasses would have access to it, but not anybody else. So that's protected, but protected is not on the AP subset. So I'm really concerned right now that you pay attention to whether variables and fields are public or whether they're private. So in superclass, in our superclass, I have two variables. I have A and B, and A is private and B is public. And so down here, I want to do some stuff, right? I'm going to make an int called product, right? I'm going to shorten it, prod, and I'm going to say that's A times B. And over here, I'm going to make an int called sum, and I'm going to do this wrong for a minute, okay? I'm going to do A plus B. All right, so I've got these two. I'm going to argue that one of these, or that these don't work, right? Because if I'm down here, if I say, hey, find me A, it's like, well, oh, so if it helps, sub extends super, if that makes you feel better. Extends super. All right, so I'm looking at A and it's saying, A is private. This guy down here, this child, cannot see its parents' private stuff. So this one does not work because A is private. But it does work just fine having B there because B is a public variable. So say I wanted to actually make this line work. If I wanted to force these guys to work, I can't just refer to A, but if they're private and the parent wants to, it can provide getters and setters. And if you have access through getters and setters, getter and setter methods, if you have access through getter and setter methods, then you have full access to all those private variables that your parents are willing to share with you. All right? So we're going to add one up here. So this will be a public, and it's going to be a public getter for A, get A. And inside of that, we'll just return A, so that this guy down here has access. Now, you can't actually change A if I don't put in a setter, but he can at least see A now. So this still doesn't work, but I'll make it work over here for this one. So this is the bad example. Here we're going to try get A. That'll get us the A value returned, and we're going to add B to it, and this is a totally happy example. Okay? All right. So if they're public, everybody has access. Private, no one has access. And if a parent wants to share with a child, they have to make getters and setters if their variables are private. All right? Their fields are private. Here we go. Next one. On to methods. How do you share a method with your child? There are two possibilities for methods. So either the subclass has its own version of method A and it's like overriding it, or it just doesn't. So we're going to handle the easy one first. So say there is no method A in the subclass. There's no method A in the subclass. The child doesn't have their own. They just want to use the parents. Easy. So if this child wants to call method A, all they have to do is just write method A. And because, remember, the sub is extending super, right? Super with a capital S, extends. Because it's extending it, it treats all of its public methods just like its own. So if you just call method A, it'll work out. Now conveniently you can call method A, but you can also call, all of these are going to be the same in this instance. You can call method A, you can call this dot method A, so it's an instance variable, so we're good, or instance method, I'm sorry. Or you could call super method A. Now this is a lowercase s super, and there is a good use for this coming up. But you can access this guy's methods by using a lowercase super. This is kind of strange, but I'm going to explain it next, all right? But just note that all of these guys are exactly the same. It's optional to put this or super in the front. Just calling method A any of these ways is going to work, okay? So if this one doesn't have its own method A, and you call method A, it's going to go up and look for it in the rest of the class, because it's an extension of this thing, okay? Now if the subclass does have the method, so here we have super has a method A and sub1 has a method A, right? Now this method A prints a capital A, and this method A prints a lowercase a. So if you call them and you get this one, a lowercase a is coming out versus this one. All right, so they're a little bit different, but we are overriding this method A with this new one, right? So this method A overrides this method A in the superclass. So I have the world's smallest board, so I worked sideways. If you're writing your notes, you should work straight down. But here we go. So this method B and method C are all in sub1. Method B really wants to call subclasses method A. So it wants to call this one. Method C wants to call this one. So if you are trying to do this, he's calling the one right where he is. So he's just going to call method A, and Java will know to default to the close one. It's going to call this one, right? If you want this one, you want to bypass yours and go up to your parents' version of it. So here he would call super, lowercase s, super dot method A. Super dot method A. This one skips this and says, hey, I want this. Yeah? Does that make sense? Got some curlies. So the other possibility is that, now I've got another subclass here, sub2 instead of sub1. So instead of just trying to call method A, and method A being a completely separate, different method, say this was a really complicated method and did a whole bunch of really awesome things, but there was one thing about it that you didn't like and that the subclass, the child, needed to change, right? So you might still want all of the original method A to run, and then you could just add on a piece. Does that make sense? So instead of rewriting all of this code, taking it down here, and then just changing your one thing, you could have this code run and then update that one little thing down here. So you wouldn't have quite as much code duplication. That would be kind of awesome. So you want to be careful. If you try to do this and you say, hey, call method A, you're going to have a problem here, because it's going to call the closest method A, which is this one, right? If it calls this method A, this call to method A is going to call this, and it'll kick off an infinite loop where it calls itself over and over and over again, which probably wasn't your goal. So instead, we could do this. We could call this one. We could call the one up above us. So we could call super.method A. Now, even if this were named something different, like super duper, I don't know, it wouldn't matter. You would still call super lowercase s method A. It's just saying, hey, call the method A from the guy above me. All right? And then, after you've got that, you could add your extra piece. Like, maybe you also want it to system.out.println the lowercase a. Okay, so we could have it just print that out right there. All right? So if this is overriding this one, we can either completely start new, or you can call the old one and then add on your pieces. All right? Now to constructors.